Every week, my colleagues and I unpack what's really happening in the world of global capability centers. We're living in unprecedented times, and most businesses aren't ready for what's coming. Many mistake using AI for simply adopting tools like ChatGPT without actually thinking about how their organizations operate. For example, how Ashish Vaswani has built RNJ model, their first open source model described as a world-class 8 billion base plus instruct pair. Or, for example, how companies are setting up their entire data value chain to acquire highly specialized expert data sets by setting up global capability centers in South Asia and South America. The real shift is happening elsewhere. Some companies are building their own models, others are embedding AI deeply into custom workflows. But many are securing long-term advantages around compute, energy, data, and most importantly, access to global talent. At the heart of it all is this: the future belongs to companies that can tap into the world's most capable, ambitious, and underutilized talent pools and turn them into a strategic advantage. In the GCC podcast, I sit down with operators, founders, and leaders to explore how the world's most important businesses are building global capability centers. Not just to cut costs, but to acquire proprietary data, develop custom AI systems, and transform their products, services, and workplaces into truly AI native organizations. This is a podcast about how global businesses are being rebuilt from the inside out. So at Davos, by the way, with the World Economic Forum, Telangana is actually launching a government-backed AI innovation hub. It's very interesting, positioned as a global AI proving ground, right? And it's essentially at its core, it's an execution layer where applied AI and deep tech and real deployments actually get tested, at enterprise scale. I think what's interesting about this is we've been talking about this quite a lot in our previous episodes. The infrastructure of innovation, right? Not just policy and so on and so forth. So why is a government-run proving ground, as they say, such a big deal? And what does it change for overall GCC strategy when you think about it?
So it's very important to understand what modern offshoring looks like, right? This is important. What does it mean by AI proving ground? It's not like this is the first time happening with the proving ground thing. In terms of medicine, this has been happening from last 2 decades. Like, for example, FDA local laws are the regulations are extremely tough to navigate, for example, in the US. So most of the companies, what they've been doing is they're building those proving grounds in South America where laws are relatively relaxed. They build the drugs, test it, and then bring it back into the US for the FDA approval, right? So you can find it like something like this is happening currently when it comes to AI proving grounds. And so companies are building global capability and capability centers, not just for onboarding more engineers who would be building custom tooling for your business or stuff like that. What they're doing is they're building these AI proving grounds where they're building those micro data centers, if you like, lots of energy, and then most importantly, incredible infrastructure for data acquisition. And for then, once you acquire that data, build a model, deploying those models into the local setting, into those states to actually learn and then export that final infrastructure into the developed markets. So that's what AI proving ground means, right? And that is a new form of offshoring. So that's why, and then if you see only business that's currently rising is GCCs, right? Yeah. Global capability centers, and what they are doing. If you see most of the GCCs, they are mostly around AI proving grounds. They're mostly around data acquisitions. That's what's happening. It's primarily in India, in Chile, but now we've seen it happening here in Lahore as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think, this is obviously a direction, the Telangana, this announcement. I think it's obviously, we can see it's the direction that governments are moving in. But it also, I think if we just kind of extract from that, it raises a question on the enterprise side too, right? Especially for R&D heavy organizations, about how leadership itself has to adapt, when AI becomes embedded across systems. And I was reading this, an example of that is Lockheed Martin's CIO, Ms. Maria Demaree, describes the CIO role as becoming sort of the orchestrator of AI across all departments, engineering, HR, finance. focused on standardizing systems and using stuff like digital twins and model-based approaches. So if AI isn't replacing these roles, but is sort of redefining them, then what does that mean specifically for R&D leaders, but then also GCC leaders as well?
So, I mean, first I would discuss on that CIO role. So if you see, I mean, 2 years back, if you ask every major CIO, what's your AI strategy? And their AI strategy was like buying enterprise license for ChatGPT, right? Yeah. So, it says that was like, I mean, even in Code Ninja, if you see, we built AI, but we haven't done much in terms of like at the time, in terms of Hyper is a very later story. Like, but at the time we did was, okay, let's start using AI. And it's a good thing because let's be the tool user. And then eventually you will find out how to build that tool, how to deploy that into your different organizations. I think when you talk about the roles and how modern roles are evolved in terms of when it comes to CTOs and CIOs, what we really need to think of is like think about AI in terms of not co-pilots. I've been saying this, but in terms of cybernetics. We need to think about there's some of the work that only AI would do. And we're just transiting from that co-pilot world to the cybernetics world. There will be certain tasks. So for example, expect this on LinkedIn, 3 years from now, when you say the company profile, they would say they're saying 400 plus people, right? That's what this vision is, right? And they would expect that it would say 400 people, 200 AIs, right? So that's how the description would be. So the people and the total workforce would be 600, 400 meat computers, 200 digital computers, right? Digital AIs. That's going to happen. And why? So if you read a novel from Charles Stross, Accelerando, it's a sci-fi novel, although it was like in 2005, it was written pre-AI. And if you see, it was set in 21st century. If you read it in that novel, it starts from 21st century, travels across that century, and it moves the word. You see how the word is moving from co-pilots to cybernetics to the post-human society, post-human entities. It's felt like Charles Stross actually time traveled and then into the future and came back and wrote that novel. It's so real, and everyone needs to read that. All the CN studios. So there, if you see, the first version was co-pilot. The second version was cybernetics. So for leaders, we need to think about AI from the lens of economy, right? So when I talk about lens of economy, so you can't segregate the workload. You can't segregate AI as a tool, and what are the implications of this in terms of economy of the company and overall. So if I am the CIO and I'm running all those organizations, my job would be like, okay, what parts of my work can be entirely, not middle to middle, entirely suited for AI, and what parts are for humans? And for that, I think the best example is, for example, think about Fin. Pricing is very important. That's why I said economy. So Fin, they only charge you if the incident is resolved through AI. Otherwise, they're not charged, right? So these kind of economic models need to be thought through, but by the technology leaders. Like, for example, if you want to reimagine hiring, so you need to think about, okay, for the first three roles or any role that's less than 5 years of experience, let's say, I'm just making it up, for all the people that we're going to hire who are with less than 5 years of experience, all that hiring would be done by AI. AI would be doing it. AI would be doing it. You should be very comfortable in it, right? Now, once you set up that goal, that parts of the business would be run by AI and parts of the business would be run by the humans, and now think about what other leader you need to do, right? That's one part of what I think how CIs should operate, and that's the only way you move beyond ChatGPTs and stuff like that. And that's very important. Second, I would say is, like, since you asked, this is my favorite topic, ask everyone in your company to wipe code. So the best way to learn about AI is use AI to build something, right? Everyone, either if you are an accountant, if you are I don't know, everyone in your organization should build something. We are in a transition, again, coming back from referring to the Accelerando, we are moving from a knowledge economy to a creator economy or tool economy, right? Everyone would be a tool maker. So we need to make sure how can we help everyone to be a tool maker. So that's everyone needs to do wipe coding, composable wipe coding, or some sort of stuff, right? So that's how, at least how I think about it. And third, I think one last thing I would say is, like, whatever your business does, if you are a logistics business, if you build sodas, if you're a Coke, let's say, what does it mean for? So I think one of the important things the first time we need to think about, if you're McDonald's, right? So now, okay, after you have built best ride-hailing experience and best customer experience. Historically, we've used technology just to better customer experience, at least in these big tech, in these Fortune 500 businesses. I think first time we need to think about real things. So, for example, how to make burgers healthy, right?
Yeah.
How to make chips healthier. So these are the questions that we should set up, and then to chase those bigger goals, we need to think about how now AI can help, because it would produce. I mean, I want to eat 10 burgers in a day. I think there's nothing better for me to eat chicken burger from McDonald's. I just love it. Right? I can eat 5 burgers, but the only thing that's restricting me is I can't eat as many calories. Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, imagine. So we need to think about in these terms, right? Pricing is very important. Pricing before product, and to that would give you a very good sense of how to build AI. If you're only building AI and you're not only measuring productivity in some form or another, the best way to measure productivity is pricing, is money. Because money is what? Money is an information storage for labor, right? So the best, so bring pricing into the picture, right? And that's how you think, how at least I am thinking about to deploy AI for. And then when you have set up these goals and these visions, now build AI proving grounds in global capability centers. Before that, I don't think there's any need.
No, I like the way you tied that entire sort of explanation up. And I think what I hear is, or let me rephrase that. Part of what I hear is that leadership is then becoming more about, orchestration, right? And treating AI as this core infrastructure that's core to the business, that's native to the business, right? So the next logical question in my mind, apart from the fact that your burger talk made me quite hungry, I think there's this. So I was reading this recent piece of news. AstraZeneca has agreed to acquire Modella AI to embed AI foundation models and agents into oncology R&D, right? So clinical development, biomarker discovery, quant pathology. So they're focusing on moving from having a partnership to having ownership. So why does this acquisition and similar ones? Obviously, it's less about pharma and more about how seriously enterprises are starting to treat AI in this way. So why does this acquisition matter beyond pharma? And what is, if we step away from pharma, what's the meta signal for corporate R&D and GCC?
I mean, they could have outsourced it into another company. I mean, the question what here at hand is, like, they could have outsourced, let's say, Infosys, because Infosys is a large R&D setup, like, for example, but they didn't. Why they are, and I think that's right. And I'll come and I'll connect it with your GCC premise as well. But I think it's important. I mean, have you ever thought of like for example, imagine I want to do something, and I give you the money, Umar, and I say, okay, take that money, be more intelligent than me, right? Be 100x more intelligent than me, and then come back and tell me how to do it, right? I think this is not automation. This isn't. I mean, I haven't seen that before. So I mean, that's not going to happen. So historically, what you used to talk to the companies for was like you exactly knew what are the moving parts. You wanted to get done certain thing. You outsource that thing to a third party business, and they would do it for you because they're cheap labor or stuff like that. But now it's not that thing, because that cheap labor part is already subsumed into the models anyways. So now what's happening is companies are finding new ways to acquire companies or building those AI capabilities in-house. So for example, if you are a pharma company, one way is you outsource your drug discovery to a third-party business, and second is build your own drug discovery thing, right? Because at the end of the day, what is pharma? Pharma is like what is their IP asset? Their IP asset is the knowledge work, how different minerals and materials work together to launch a new drug into the market. So in launching new drug, you need that initial infrastructure of where you simulate the entire thing, do the trial runs, and then of course launching it. So the whole thing the companies are now doing is like they're building those capabilities in-house. And what is the best way to build in-house capability? Either acquire something or build something through global capability centers. That's the only thing, right? And that's important. And I think that's the right way to do. Although Ninja's major businesses through working with these companies, and GCC is a newer one, but yeah, I mean, that's what I'm seeing is like building capabilities in-house, especially capabilities that require AI, that require intelligence, building that whole supply chain of data infrastructure, building whole supply chain of proving grounds. All that's in-house is best done either through acquisition or through global capability centers.
And I think all of these, little tidbits of news, and specifically when we talk about pharma, since that's the ongoing kind of discussion, I think at the end of the day, it all signals ownership, right? If you can't beat them, buy them, kind of thing, right? And I think if we look downstream of that, like how that ownership actually becomes genuinely operationalized, when domain expertise, but then also compute and feedback loops and all of those things have to work together continuously. Um, I think there's another announcement as well that I was reading up, and I think that's also probably a good one to share. NVIDIA announced a partnership with Eli Lilly, which, as I'm reading, up to $1 billion over 5 years for a joint AI lab in the Bay Area, leveraging NVIDIA's next-gen Vera Rubin architecture. And the focus is accelerating drug discovery development, tightening the loop between research and compute. And this was announced like about a week ago on January 12th, right? So taking that as a discussion point for this, what's the blueprint, right? How should GCCs copy this approach, and even in those cases when they maybe don't have budgets like NVIDIA does, right?
So I think you talked about loop. I just want to stick with that word loop. When you talk about this story, again, NVIDIA and Eli Lilly, so it's all about how to build a co-innovation lab, how to build a compute platform, how to come up with domain scientists, how to engineer different workflows, not just an AI team in a corner or your IT team buying chat GPTs. So the real asset is the loop, like data, model, experiment, feedback, and then improve model. This is what compresses timeline. So this loop is important. If you ask me what is the single most important thing in this loop, it's data. So data has this very scary relationship with the builders. So at one point, people started saying like data is important. That was the start of post chat GPT Model 3 launch. And then there was a time when DeepMind started to say like AlphaFold 2 was trained at the same data at AlphaFold 1 and then AlphaFold. So they started like data is not that important. And then after thinking machine, Miramurthy, reinforcement learning, their approach, data again came back into the single most important component into the AI. So currently at this state, as we speak, the single most important thing in AI is energy, compute, and data, right? So in terms of that data acquisition, this loop is very important. So yes, I think for businesses, what can be done is, I mean, if you don't have, like you talked about NVIDIA level compute budgets, like if you don't have NVIDIA level compute budgets, which I'm sure most of the people doesn't, you don't have $1 billion. So I think what's important is like how to build that vertical micro lab, if you like, one domain, specific problem, one data set pipeline, and one validation harness, and one deployment path. Like for example, how to really focus on one thing and then build it from there. So how to build that vertical micro lab. That's, I think, and that's not very expensive, especially if you're setting up GCC, let's say in South Asia or South America. I mean, it's not that expensive.
Mm-hmm. And I like that you stuck to the idea of the loop, because I think what's common across all of these examples is that at the end of the day, I think the scale of the companies that we're talking about, right, the hard part is not experimentation. It's more about turning those learning loops into something that is repeatable and scalable. And I think that's also where a lot of enterprises, taking an industry agnostic approach, obviously, sort of get stuck, right? And then partnerships like, for example, TCS and AMD, right? They announced a collaboration to accelerate enterprise AI adoption at scale. That was part of the announcement, and emphasizing moving beyond pilots into production, plus hybrid cloud, HPC, and industry-specific solutions. So, what would you say about these integrator plus compute partnerships that have suddenly become?
The biggest thing that's what these integrators are doing, they're building GCCs now.
Yeah.
Right? They're building AI proving grounds, and whatever they're doing is under that umbrella. They're trying to do at least. So I think here, I like the analogy of invisible AI CEO. It's not like it's not a system. They're not system integrators, but like they asked, like Harry Stebbings in 20VC asked, like, what exactly you do, right? So like, look, I mean, we talk to the customer, and I think it's a very good analogy. I use it a lot. I copied it from there, and we're using it a lot now. That like we talk to the customer, like you have every component to make the cake. We're the company that makes the cake, right? So we make AI work for you. That is what most of the system integrators are doing now. But for that, you need to have that infrastructure, that talent capability, that compute capability. You need to have that kind of a skill set to make AI work. So for example, if I talk about in Code Ninja, not everyone is capable to build. So there are very specialized teams led by Adil, for example. Those teams are basically, they know full loop of the making AI work in these organizations. I mean, I'm not saying it. I mean, I'm not. So I'm familiar with one of the incident, like for example, where we suggested something to a major enterprise, and they said that it's too ambitious.
Okay.
And eventually that enterprise leader had to go. So because they couldn't haven't had anything to show for. So what I'm saying is, of course, I'm just I'm just trying to not share the whole story, but what I'm trying to say here is, like, when you deploy AI, nothing is ambitious. I mean,
Yeah.
what is hard, what you think is harder or a step change is not a step change. That's what AI is. That's what companies like and people like Adil are supposed to do. Like, for example, how to make AI work, how to take those mental leaps where you otherwise that's what it, otherwise your total transformation would be using ChatGPT for all the knowledge work and using Cursor for all the other coding work. That's not how it's that's not how gonna look like. I gave this example to Rafa as well. Think about it. Why economics are important. If you want to understand AI, learn from the lens of economics and learn from the lens of Imad Mushtaq. Imad Mushtaq is a mathematician who built stable diffusion,
Yep.
and he is an economist. He's a mathematician, economist, and AI researcher, right?
Excellent speaker.
So he said recently, he said, like, think about it. Like, that's how leaders need to think about AI. Humans produce 10 million words in a year. That's how you generate intelligence, right? You generate intelligence with speaking, so 10 million words. What it means is, like, in terms of tokens, it means 7 million tokens. Let's round it off. 10 million tokens. You generate 10 million, equivalent of 10 million tokens intelligence in a year, right? So when GPT-3 came in, that was like $600 per 1 million token. So essentially, if someone has to compete with Umar Khan's level of intelligence, he has to spend $6,000, and they would have generated as much intelligence as Umar Khan, right? Then, but that was like 2 years back, right? Now, Grok is $0.5 per million tokens. So essentially, in $1, I can acquire the entire intelligence that you're going to produce in a year, right? I'm not sure. I spoke with Rafa. I'm not sure what does cognitive labor mean at this stage, right? I'm not sure about it. Like, but that's the angle to look at for the leaders. So nothing is ambitious here. We are basically in times where we need to just take lots of bets. Some would work, some won't, right? But and we need to be very comfortable in uncertainty. With dealing with uncertainty. So I think that's important to think about how you are thinking about AI, how you're thinking about making AI work, about partnerships and all that stuff. So coming back to the point, sorry, I just read this. It's coming to the point why system integrators are important is, like, making AI work if you have the competency. The two things is that competency acquisition is not that hard. Most of the competent people are already in the labs, are already in the US. So they're very, you don't have those many researchers. And if you are a very good researcher, you're building your own AI business. So for the business, and by the way, there are only 10 to 12 companies out there who are basically tech businesses. Most of the business in the world, by the way, I mean, we are in the tech so much that we probably think everyone is doing tech. Most of the business in the world are not tech, right?
Yeah.
Out of Fortune 500 companies, I think not more than 483 companies are non-tech, right? The primary business is not tech, right? So how they access to the talent or how they access to that infrastructure. So the system integrator's job is to acquire this talent, and there's a very new kind of talent. It's not like 10 Node.js engineers, right? It's not like 40 .NET Core engineers. It's a very different kind of talent. Acquire that talent, root that talent, and help these businesses compete with their in the global market. So that's how. So for example, if you're a Procter & Gamble and you're trying to roll out AI beyond ChatGPT and Cursor, you have an incredible researcher who's leading your program because he's PhD from MIT and all that stuff, and he's rolling out your program. And that's not enough. It's not, because all the other lot that needs to make AI work is basically in those tech businesses who are giving them $100 million and $10 million and $20 million, or they're building their own businesses. So basically, these companies are wide open. So they're talking to those system integrators and trying to make things work for them, which is at some point is working, at some point it's not working. There are some micro innovation hubs within those big organizations. Some very few people they've retained. So that's how it's working. What a great time to be an AI researcher, by the way.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No. So for today's discussion, I wanted to take a little bit of a more focused approach in terms of what are some of the things that are happening around us, and I think across these handful of stories that we talked about today, I think if we zoom out. They all sort of point in the same direction, right? AI is moving out of labs and out of pilots and into genuinely regulated, owned, mission critical workflows. I wanted to sort of end today's conversation by asking you to maybe summarize a little bit different today. Summarize this episode in one sentence. If I ask,
I don't know. Why don't you ask ChatGPT or Notebook LM? Take this. summarize far better than I do. But I
Yeah.
think, so I think, as I said, like, I mean, I'm a huge sci-fi fan. Every major Netflix series, every major book on sci-fi. For example, if you want to Charles Stross and all those people, I've read them a lot. So most of my analogies are there. So, for example, again, I would say like one thing we need to think about is like what I mean, refer to that Accelerando book, and we are transitioning from that co-pilot moment to cybernetics moment. Cybernetics means humans and machines would work side by side. It's not like that AI would not helping Umar to do more. AI would be doing its job, Umar would be doing its job, and my budget would be, if I am a, let's say, a sales guy, if I'm a HR guy, my budget, I would have a fixed budget, and that budget would look like, okay, you have let's say $100,000. Let's say I'm just making it up, $100,000 for a year to run the HR org, or or $100,000 to run this HR org for a month. It's my monthly budget, and $70,000 would be allocated towards human intelligence. 30,000 would be allocated to digital intelligence, and those 30, and the jobs would be very different. Like it's not like that assisting, that co-piloting thing is over now. We're not transitioning. I mean, I was speaking with Rafia. She asked me this: how Cursor 5.2 is executing end-to-end engineering tasks. You know that? I mean, Cursor has recently integrated Codex 5.2, GPT 5.2 into its platform, and what to demonstrate that they've done is like they have executed they have termed this thing as GPT 5.2 as a model to execute long-running tasks. So they run a task of creating a browser which the task ran for a week, created a Rust browser, generated 3 million lines of code in Rust. So basically, that's not outsourcing. That's an end-to-end execution. That's not assisting. So basically, we need to think about in terms of knowledge, like what cybernetic things we need to make. And it's okay if we have to push a little bit harder. Things would go wrong at some point, but eventually that's what is going to happen. And I want to just end by saying, Umar, I mean, we've been listening this a lot. Like there's lots of non-determinism. You need human in the loop, and that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. There's a lot of randomness. So Stephen Wolfram, and I love this when he said, like, I'm just keep on quoting it again and again. So he said, like, microprocessor is not defined by the randomness of electrons. Humans have built those towers of infrastructure on top of microprocessors to build determinism. So, for example, if you are now switching on your Mac, there's a 99.99999% probability that if you switch on the Mac, it would switch on, although the underlying infrastructure is extremely random. That's exactly what's going to happen with neural networks. So I think companies who are going to be ahead of the curve probably would have a very big chance to create more abundance for themselves, for the people around them. So don't be carried away by this thing like neural networks are hallucination and all that bullshit crap. That's over. I mean, we are just a couple of scientific breakthroughs away from wiping out the entire classes of knowledge works. I'm telling you, mark my words, that's going to happen. So we need to make sure how to use AI tools maximally in Code Ninja and trying to build a platform hyper, helping somehow giving the developers the tool to interact with a lot of tools, bring that generalization stuff into the software development. Then we're doing this GCC thing, helping companies build AI labs there. That comes with data infrastructure. One of the things you are working with, Adil, is OpenBrain. It's a classic example of how can you set up on-prem data infrastructure for these big organizations. So there's lots going on there. But yeah, I mean, as Elon says, I'm not sure whether it would be certain or it would be good, but it would be very exciting, I guess. That's what he said.